Hello, Lee.
Hey, man, how's it going?
It's going great, buddy. We're just living large in the dystopian future, which is actually today.
I can tell, but the festive nature of your shirt is making up for it.
I was like, you know what this dystopian life needs right now? It needs a festive shirt.
Absolutely. It eases everything. You can ease into dystopia like it's a warm bath, if you have a festive shirt on. Sorry if I both seem out of sorts and if there's a bit of an echo or something, but I have just moved into a new place. There's boxes everywhere. It's chaos. So doing the best I can.
Well, congratulations on the move, or I don't know, maybe the government forced you to move. I don't know what the circumstances of this are, Ali, but thoughts and prayers.
I moved a full 3 blocks, so I'm pretty excited. Moving on up in the world.
So how did you do? Did you just I hope the other place is just downhill and you can just kind of slide the boxes down the street. Is that...
Yeah, I only moved downhill, which gets increasingly difficult to keep finding places lower than before.
That's our tip for today, guys. Always move downhill.
Absolutely. It also means you always end up in basement apartments.
You're just putting everything on your skateboards and just shoving it down the street. Right?
Yep. I don't skateboard, but I own 35 skateboards just for the moves.
Just for these yearly downhill moves that you do. Every year you move downhill. I think it's great. Well, thank you for taking time out of your busy skateboard move to join us.
For you, anything. Word had gotten around on the street about your shirt, and I had to see it for myself. So,
have you seen Graham's new fun dystopian shirt? I want to start. Maybe I start like a Jimmy Buffett style following of dystopian heads or whatever. Like his group is called Parrot Heads, and I'll just be like wasting away again in the deep state or whatever. Right?
Absolutely. I'm down. I think there should be lawn chairs involved. There should totally be lawn chairs. Apparently at the beginning of the Civil War, in some of the earlier battles, the wealthier people would literally set up lawn chairs at a distance to go watch the battles. And I think we should do that for the devolution into Armageddon,
That's not psychotic at all to go watch a war like it's a sporting event. Just hear people get shot and killed and be like, oh.
I mean, now we do it on television, right? The beginning of the Iraq War, they showed the bombs dropping. The latest Syria bombing, they show remember Brian Williams, the beauty of their weapons? Yeah.
I'm guided by the beauty of our weaponry. Oh, Brian, you lawn chair watching psychopath. This is exciting times. I think we need lawn chairs and fancy shirts for the collapse of the American empire.
Yes, we do. Yes, we do.
I would suggest getting a good, safe distance away from this collapse.
Well, basement apartments will deal with the bombs better, I feel like. Yeah.
And an arsenal of skateboards will help.
No doubt.
Ladies and gentlemen, you're listening to Government Secrets with Lee Cap and Graham Elwood, episode 33. Pew, 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 pew. Armageddon lawn chair episode. So I found a fun CIA operation. I did good old-fashioned Operation Roulette.
All right. I love all your operations, but one of these weeks we're going to hold you to a no CIA episode. It's going to be a CIA-free episode.
It's just so fun because literally you type in CIA operation, and I went through I'm only on C. So and
have you ever gotten one that's like CIA Operation Snow Cone, where they gave out snow cones to everybody?
I did. There is one like that. It's like, there was some holiday and it was like, oh, this is their holiday party, or they did Toys for Tots or something like that.
You got to dig deep because there's got to be something awful in there. Like every teddy bear had a receiver to blow up to thing with the guy or whatever.
Every teddy bear was infected with smallpox. You know it.
There's not a happy ending to any CIA operation. I don't want to hear it. So we can get into that. We can get into my CIA operation roulette, or we could do yours first. I know you have kind of you told me the title of this one and I was like going to research it, but then I was like, no, I just want Lee to tell me.
I like it. I like watching your eyes get wider as we go through these.
It's so exciting. You've come up with some fantastic ones. I mean, I remember early on, it was the guy who made the two trains smash into each other. That was just
yeah.
Like
that was a bit of a tangent because that was less of a government secret and more just like a idiot secret, but
but still just great. It was everything that makes America amazing, just like money and blowing shit up and just
well, I went first last week, so why don't you take it away? But I will let people know that my story will be the Battle of Blair Mountain, and we'll get into that in a few minutes.
I was like, oh, Battle of Blair Mountain.
Different than the Blair Witch Project, but not much.
Yeah, I was like, is this Escape from Witch Mountain and the Blair Witch Project like a mashup? Is that what it is? Is that what I'm hoping it is? It's some sort of like Freaky Friday witch thing. Like, I can't wait to see what this is. Like, the government hired a coven of witches to take over a mountain or something. I can't wait. I'm so excited. But in the meantime, let us share the screen and talk about, I almost did Operation Ajax, which we've talked about that a little bit. I don't think we've ever done a full episode. Operation Ajax was the CIA plan to overtake Mossadegh in 1953.
Okay.
We've touched on it, we've mentioned it, but we've never done like a full segment on it.
Okay.
But we'll get to that. So forgive me if I skipped over an A and went into a C. But I want to talk about
Government Secrets first segment. Pew, 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 pew. Operation Chaos.
Yes. I thought it was a joke. I thought it was a video game.
It should also be a video game, but yeah,
it should also be. This is also the name of a Rush Limbaugh 2008 political strategy, but here it is. The Operation Chaos, or Operation MH Chaos, was a CIA domestic espionage project targeting the American people from 1967 to 1974. So whenever you hear like, well, the CIA is not allowed to you operate on American soil, just start laughing. Just laugh.
I know. I wonder if you were to go through the CIA's entire history, I wonder how much would be done against people from other countries and how much versus how much done against U.S. citizens. I feel like it's like 50-50.
I would even go 60-40 against US. That's where I would bet. If I was a wagering man, I would do that. Because
the taking out the American president Kennedy probably adds a few percentage points, I feel like.
I think they pick up a few. When you kill an American president and in broad daylight, I think that's I think that counts. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to mention that. I don't want YouTube to.
Oh yeah, never mind YouTube. We love you.
Sorry, they're gonna come and just reclaim this fun shirt I'm wearing.
We love you, and Kennedy was killed by Marxism.
Just the concept, the political ideology of Marxism.
Yep,
came down from the book depository and hit him.
Absolutely. It was his drink was spiked with Marxism.
It actually was a Marxism laced bullet that Lee Harvey Oswald shot, and that's why Marxism can make a bullet defy physics.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So we know this because the CIA said it.
Because it's got the power of sharing in it. Any bullet, coated it with the power of sharing is deadly. Double.
I grant this bullet the power of sharing, and then he put it in, and that's how the Marxist bullet went. Yeah. So yes, YouTube, don't demonetize us again. Whatever, go fuck yourself, YouTube. I'm making fucking crypto. I'm making it rain on Rockfin, fuckos. I don't care. Anyway, Bitcoin's at about 57,000. It's probably going to break an all-time high soon. Anyway, the CIA was targeting American people from 1967 to 1974, established by President Lyndon Baines Johnson and expanded under Nixon. See, it goes back so far. The two parties are not different at all.
Yeah.
Like, they're not different at all. And weird that Kennedy wanted to stop the war. He wanted to break the CIA into 1,000 pieces and scatter it into the wind. And then after he's murdered, a Democrat and a Republican expand this thing, letting the CIA target its own citizens.
Yeah, which either means they were cool with it even before they became president, or they saw what happened to Kennedy and they were like, you know what, CIA guys, I love you. You guys are awesome.
Look, I might have said some things in the past that were negative. We all say crazy things. I had a couple of drinks. You had a couple of drinks. Let's just let bygones be bygones, and I'll sign this order letting you target American people.
Right.
So the mission was to uncover possible foreign influence on domestic race, anti-war, and other protest movements. Hey, what a wacky coincidence that all these movements in the mid to late 60s, early 70s were gaining a lot of strength. They were trying to take down the Vietnam War. And then by the mid to late 70s, everybody was just like doing disco. And then the 80s was the me generation where all anyone cared about was money. I'm sure the CIA had nothing to do with that. Nothing to do with that. It's just a culture shift. That's all.
Yeah. Unrelated.
Totally unrelated. Because it's not like the CIA has studied how to manipulate people and societies. That's not like they've been doing that at all. So the operation was launched under Director of CIA Intelligence, Richard Helms. I think he's been on our show before. I think he's right below Dulles in terms of...
Yeah, Helms and Dulles, and yeah, they show up a lot.
They're fans of the show, I think. They're recurring characters.
Recurring guest stars.
Returning guest stars.
Returning guest star Dick Helms on tonight's episode.
She was it was launched under Richard Helms by Chief of Counterintelligence James Jesus Angleton, and headed.
Oh, yeah, he's shown up before too. Angleton.
Yeah.
He's a recurring character.
It's another recurring character. Oh, it's so great having him back on the show. I love a good Helms Angleton rerun.
And considering how I feel like he was probably a white waspy guy, it was if his middle name was Jesus, it was probably Jesus.
It was James Jesus Angleton.
Jesus Angleton.
Oh, JJ Angles.
I don't think they were putting a lot of Hispanics at the top of the CIA in 1960s.
Yeah, I think you might be right. You might absolutely be right. Like, yeah, they just he's a good Christian whose name is Jesus.
Probably.
And it was headed by Richard Ober. The MH designation is to signify the program had a worldwide area of operations. So they could they didn't have to just worry about targeting Americans on American soil. They could do it globally, Lee. Doesn't that make you feel better?
Yes, it absolutely. That they were getting started that early in world domination is good to see. You know, I was worried that it was more a recent advent, but
no, they've been cooking that one up for a while. I mean, again, going back to Operation Ajax with Mossadegh, that was 1953. So we're already 14 years removed from that. We know through Operation Paperclip that they've been working with Nazis since the end of World War II.
Well, they were created like the year after World War II. So they really dove right in, I guess.
I mean, you want to talk about a startup that did well. The CIA.
the seed money was really great amount of seed money, and they just really jumped in both feet.
Oh, those young upstarts at the OSS that turned it into the CIA, and now they're a global brand, isn't it? Just like they're the Ray Kroc of intelligence. They've franchised out surveillance and toppling democratically elected leaders. I can't think of anything to be more proud of.
And they've created offshoots, offshoot entities like NED and USAID, and really branched out beautifully.
They've done fantastic stuff. I mean, they've funded. We should do a sole episode that just lists all of the horrific armies and governments that the CIA has funded throughout the years.
Yeah.
The Contras, the ISIS, whatever else, So the background on this, the CIA, and again, what I love when these operations are just on Wikipedia, which we know Wikipedia can be, full of bullshit, but this is the CIA going, I think the CIA does this to go, yeah, we want you to know what we do.
Well, yeah, no, I was going to point this out as well. We're often reading from Wikipedia, but I think in this scenario, that's a good plan, because this is kind of like the liberal kind of almost state propaganda, but not quite level of information. So if Wikipedia is willing to have this, these stories and cover this, then that this is like mainstream understanding. It's not talked about. I mean, they're not going to talk about it on mainstream media. They want to forget about this. But that if it's on Wikipedia, then it is like it's been reported by the New York Times at some point, a dozen or 20 or 30 years ago at some point, with buried under, column A12 or whatever. But because I'm in the next story, I'm also going to get a lot of information from Wikipedia. And it's not that I think Wikipedia is reliable. It's that I think it is the liberal kind of like diluted version. But if you're getting this from that, then this is no, like, we're not reading from some guy's blog or something.
Right. Yeah. That this is the official statement that they've put out.
Right.
So it's like, I read your official statement on Wikipedia and I know it's awful. So it says two things to me. One, there's probably more awful shit in there that isn't uncovered on Wikipedia, obviously, because like you say, it's just neoliberal nonsense. But also,
and sometimes we get into that stuff that's would never be on Wikipedia, like the stuff from William Pepper, the lawyer William Pepper, who revealed what happened to Martin Luther King, how he was killed. And so we definitely would get deeper at times, but for certain like surface level stuff, talking about an operation or things like that, we're giving the accepted kind of liberal worldview, but these things have been buried, which is why we call it government secrets. These things have been ignored or forgotten, or they don't want to talk about them.
Yeah, it's like it's that kind of like Freedom of Information Act kind of stuff where they'll just dump 30,000 documents and go, well, see, we're being transparent. Like,
right.
Hey, it's on Wikipedia, but no one's going to cover this. They're not going to do a deep dive. Rachel Maddow's not going to do a 3 weeks talking about this. No one's going to go, this is awful. They started this in the 60s, so they're still doing it today. No one's going to say that. You and I are. That's what this show's all about. But I wonder, too, how much of this, putting this on Wikipedia, is part of the CIA going, yeah, you sure you want to fuck with us? Like, this is just sort of like mob guys, like, well, yeah, your buddy fell down a flight of stairs and landed on a shotgun. Like, it just feels like there's just an air of threat to it.
Well, I think what you could be touching on is what some people think is a ongoing strategy by the CIA, which is the phrase limited hangout. And it was coined accidentally by like Nixon or something in some of those tapes that were revealed. And it comes from the expression "let it all hang out." And so they were discussing, well, what we'll do is we'll not let it all hang out. We'll have a limited hangout. will reveal enough of the information that people think they've learned the truth, but we're not going to give them the deeper, darker truth. For example, we're not going to tell them that we arranged Kennedy's murder, or that we were, willing and connected to MLK's murder. So there are many people out there that you would say basically that Wikipedia is a limited hangout. It is a revelation by the CIA and the deep state of some of their operations, some of what they've been involved in, but it's not going to have what's happening today. It's not going to have all of the top secret shit they're working on right now. It's going to have the stuff from 20 years ago, because they are no longer as worried about people finding out about what happened 20 years ago as they are about what they're involved in right now.
That's a great point. And as we look at this Operation Chaos in Wikipedia, you and I know from doing this show and the other, shows that we each do individually, that this absolutely, when I saw Operation Chaos, I was like, oh, this must have been, I'm sure this was involved in killing Kennedy and MLK and anyone else that and Bobby and whoever else was like, because the people they're outlining are a threat to America, are also these organizations like Fred Hampton, like the Black Panthers, like any of the anti-war movements, anything that so there's no way, if I read this, I go, you honestly think I'm an idiot and you're going to tell me there wasn't CIA inside MLK's group, inside Bobby Kennedy's group, inside the Black Panthers? We know it was. I mean,
right.
So Wikipedia is not going to say that, but we know it. Because we can connect the dots to the other stuff we've already researched.
Right. And it's, like when we talked about Malcolm X, a good example is when we talked about Malcolm X's assassination initially, several months ago, we talked about how his organization was infiltrated, and even the guy that gave him mouth to mouth was NYPD. And what we didn't know, and they weren't going to tell us or reveal, and what Wikipedia wouldn't tell you either, is what we now know. We learned 2 weeks ago, which we talked about on the show, which is another NYPD officer came forward and said he also had been on his deathbed. He also had been infiltrated the group, and his job was to get security arrested, Malcolm X's security, so that there would be no security at the door the night he was assassinated, meaning the NYPD must have known and facilitated the execution of Malcolm X. Now, we didn't know that the first time we talked about it, but we did know that his group had been infiltrated, and we assumed that it was on a high level.
Yep. And I mean, obviously, like you say, they don't want you to know about what they're doing at the time. It's okay to find out later, like, oh, the guy that was the FBI informant for Fred Hampton, we didn't know about him till recently. And he killed himself in the 80s because he couldn't live with himself. So it's like, they're okay with revealing, but there's no way they want to know, like, what's not going to be on Wikipedia is here's the CIA, here's the people that are involved in Black Lives Matter and that are in the Proud Boys and the CIA and the, Antifa or wherever else. They're not going to say that, but they are. We know damn well they are. Like, there's no way. And these are all the CIA people in quote indie media. There's got to be intelligence people in our world.
Yeah, absolutely. And infiltrating third parties, trying to make third parties seem, fractured or like they're crazy or whatever. There's no question that goes on. But so it's kind of a limited hangout historically. It's like, we'll give you most of what went down 40, 60 years ago. But we're not going to give you this past 10 years,
Yeah. I mean, we're not going to talk about we're not going to talk about 9/11. We're not going to talk about the war in Iraq or Afghanistan or any. I mean, there's no way they're like, we're not going to talk about, they probably had CIA and Dennis Kucinich's campaign or Bernie's or
I know. Like, who were the higher ups in Bernie's campaign were infiltrators. Yeah.
They had to have been. They were just deliberately nosediving him. Or the meeting where they went, hey, Bernie, we're going to kill your grandkids. And he went, okay, my good friend Joe Biden, I want him to be president. Like, whatever that meeting was, So, all right, let me go back to this document because this is getting to the history of this, which really supports everything that we're talking about. So this has been going on since the late 50s, and there's no way it has stopped. It's obviously this is still happening today. The CIA began domestic recruiting operations in 1959 in the process of finding Cuban exiles who could be used in the campaign against communist Cuba and President Fidel Castro. As these operations expanded, the CIA formed a domestic operations division in 1964. Oh, right after they killed Kennedy. In 1965, LBJ requested that the CIA begin its own investigation in domestic dissent, independent of the FBI's ongoing COINTELPRO. So, which I know we've discussed a little bit on the show. I don't know that we've done a full segment.
Yeah.
The CIA developed numerous operations targeting American dissidents in the U.S. Many of these programs operated under the CIA's Office of Security, including HTLingual, directed at letters passing between U.S. and the then Soviet Union. The program invoked the examination of correspondence to and from individuals or organizations placed on a watch list. Jesus. Project 2, directed at infiltration of foreign intelligence targets by agents posing as dissident sympathizers, and which, like Chaos, had placed agents within domestic radical organizations for the purpose of training and establishment of dissident credentials. Jesus. Project MERRIMAC, well, when I get to the M's, we'll do this one. Designed to infiltrate domestic anti-war and radical organizations through a thought to pose a threat to security of CIA property and personnel. Project Resistance worked with college administrators. My dad was a college professor in the 60s and 70s. He went to Germany a lot. Maybe he was part of this. I don't know. Worked with college administrators, campus security, and local police to identify anti-war activists and political dissidents without any infiltration taking place. Jesus Christ.
Wow.
So these are, I mean, so it's like Operation Chaos is this like umbrella, and underneath it, and this is independent of all the evil shit the FBI was doing and that Hoover was doing.
Yeah.
So we've got HTLingual, Project 2, Project MERRIMAC, Project Resistance. Those four projects all underneath Operation Chaos.
Yeah, and you would see some of the infiltrators or infiltration would be revealed when some of these things would go to court. So, for example, I know we talked about the 1968 Democratic Convention where Chicago 7 or 8, if you count Bobby Seale, went on trial. And during that trial, which was a complete clown car, I think we dug into it, or I mean, maybe I don't know if we dug into the recent movie on Netflix about Chicago 7, but during that trial, all of these people were witnesses because it turned out they were infiltrators in the group. There was a woman who Jerry Rubin had gone on dates on or something. She was an infiltrator for the FBI or for the police or something. There was a photographer that was considered a good friend of theirs that was with them like all the time. That was an infiltrator. So when this shit would go to trial, that's when all of the like fucking infiltrators would come out of the woodwork and be witnesses for the state. And you're kind of like, wow, I guess we were surrounded by fucking cops this whole time.
This whole time. I mean, literally this whole time. And there's not one single protest that anybody went to this past summer where there wasn't private intelligence there and FBI dressed up as protesters. There's not one. There's not one single one that anyone went to where there weren't those people in there probably screaming the loudest, wearing the biggest signs, whatever.
And there's different, as we're referencing, there's different kind of levels of this going on. So there's the to me, rather obvious plainclothes police. I remember at Occupy, there'd be guys like you could tell the people that were there because they cared about the cause. And then there'd be like a few guys who were like ripped with like t-shirts that looked like they were about to bust off them and like crew cuts. And they're like, man, I'm just here for the environment. And I'm like, I don't think you are. I think it's something else. So there were some of those where it was obvious, but there's many others, you know, that some of them are not actual law enforcement. They're people who were caught for some, you know, crime, let's say a drug crime or something, and they're just told to report back on what's going on there. So those people won't generally look like cops because they're not cops. They're, you know, kind of unfortunate people, got caught for something. The cops said, we'll give you 20 years unless you go to this protest and tell us everything that's going on and ask them about what's, you know, where they're headed, what they want to do. So, you know, there's report back stuff. And then there's also the level where there's certain people trying to amp it up, trying to make it illegal, you know, trying to recommend bombing things to see if they can get people arrested.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's a big tactic that they've used. And then you've got all the private intelligence people like J-Trig and whatnot, working to do a lot of this. I mean, I've seen J-Trig in my live chat before. They're just trying to disrupt the live chat, you know, so,
and Tiger Swan,
which
I swear was the name of a dojo.
Strike first, strike hard, Tiger Swan. Yeah, Tiger Swan, of course, as we know, was hired to go after water protectors at Standing Rock. This is under the Obama administration. Wasn't he great?
Yep.
Well, there's a couple more, and then we'll move on to your thing.
Yep.
So this is the here's some of the organizations that the Operation Chaos targeted. Is Students for a Democratic Society, Black Panther Party, Young Lords, Women's Strike for Peace, Ramparts Magazine.
Ramparts Magazine. That's where Robert Scheer was. He was Robert Scheer, who now, you know, and Robert Scheer's an iconic journalist, investigative journalist, and now he was at the LA Times for years. Then he had Truth Dig. Then now he's got Scheer Post that I write for. But yeah, he was at Ramparts Magazine.
Yep. So yeah, and so when Nixon came to office in '69, existing domestic surveillance activities were consolidated into Operation Chaos. Operation Chaos first used CIA stations abroad to report on anti-war activities of U.S. citizens traveling abroad, employing methods such as physical surveillance and electronic eavesdropping, utilizing liaison services and maintaining such surveillance. The operations were later expanded to include 60 officers. In 1969, following the expansion, the operation began developing its own network of informants for the purposes of infiltrating various foreign anti-war groups located in foreign countries that might have ties to domestic groups. Eventually, the CIA officers expanded the program to include other leftist and countercultural groups with no discernible connection to Vietnam. So just anybody.
Yeah.
Groups operating within the women's liberation movement, which is insane. And I think there's some evidence I've seen a lot of evidence, and we should maybe dedicate a whole segment on this. To Gloria Steinem was a CIA op.
No, it's not evidence. There's an interview where she says it.
Really?
It's not a theory. She's in it. You can look it up on YouTube and just look up Steinem CIA. She was asked about being in the CIA, and she says, yeah, I was in the CIA, or I was working with the CIA. And I found, I'd heard all these awful things about the CIA, but I found that they were just hardworking men and women who cared about America, or something like that. But so it's not. Yeah, Steinem it's not a theory about her being in the CIA. She has said it in interviews.
Oh, fantastic. Well, that's an upcoming government secret for sure. The domestic spying of Operation Chaos also targeted the Israeli embassy and domestic Jewish groups such as B'nai B'rith in order to gather intelligence on the embassy.
B'nai B'rith.
B'nai B'rith, sorry. The CIA.
God, Graham, you're so not Jewy.
L'chaim. The CIA purchased, this is good tax dollar usage, purchased a garbage collection company to collect documents that were to be destroyed. So this is all told. And this is, again, according to WikiLeaks. So we can, or Wikipedia, sorry. We can only assume that this is the polished, nice version. Operation Chaos contained files on 7,200 Americans, so just add a 0, and a computer index totaling 300,000 civilians and approximately 1,000 groups.
Jesus Christ.
So makes you feel proud again, right?
Yeah, I mean, it goes back to like the CIA doesn't just overthrow other countries; they overthrew America. They took over the United States.
No, they've completely. That's a great way to put it. They've completely overthrown this country because we don't have a representative democracy. You can't have labor groups or anti-war groups. They've infiltrated and overthrown. That's why this country is so propagandized. That's why, like, I'll post on Facebook that why is Joe Biden bombing Syria when he hasn't given us our $1,400 left? And then some like so-called liberal comedian that I know is like, oh, Graham, Biden had to respond, or he wrote like Biden responded to a thing and I fixed it for you. And I'm just like, oh, so you're defending war. When the Democrats bomb poor people in the Middle East, you defend it. And this country's been so propagandized.
Yeah. That's my favorite is pathetic, double-digit IQ comedians who decide that their moral quest is going to be to attack me for actually standing up for the, innocent people we're obliterating or something.
Yeah. And they always seem to support war. And you're just like, don't call yourself a liberal. Just say you're what are you, just a pro-choice warmonger? What are you then? Like,
I mean, but we're now it's adults bombing. So it's all better.
It is.
It's all, what was it? Jank tweeted, Biden's speech, was it today or yesterday? Biden gave a speech and Jank tweeted, the speech is so boring. God, it's wonderful. He really is the polar opposite of Donald Trump. And you're like, that's the fact the speech is boring is the fucking problem, that we are killing people around the globe. Much of the foreign policy has hardly changed from Biden to Trump or Trump to Biden. And yet the speech was boring. Who gives a shit? Like that, it's easier for them to get away with their fucking crimes if the speeches are boring than if Trump's pissing people off.
Yeah. And it's like, and you see like Cenk, I wouldn't be surprised. Cenk it's got to be controlled opposition. I mean, I don't know if he's smart enough to work at the CIA, but.
Well, someone responded to his tweet saying that, oh, the speech is boring. Look how great Biden is. With their response was tell me that you take millions of dollars of Clinton super donor cash without telling me.
Yeah, I know. It's so preposterous. Like these people have been so, I don't even think you got to work for the CIA. Yeah. You just take Clinton donor money and then just they know this person will easily fall for Trump derangement syndrome. So like, look how effective Trump was. And I think that's why they really wanted to get rid of Trump. Not because he was always evil or whatever, because he's doing the same evil shit that everyone's done. He just was getting way too many people to wake up. They're watching Biden's boring speech and sellouts like Cenk go, oh, thank God he's so boring. And they're like, yep, go back to sleep. Old man Biden's talking. Who cares if he's bombing people and not giving you your money? And, oh, the stimulus plan is going to help working people. Well, you guys just got rid of $15 an hour minimum wage. So not really. Like a tax break for a year for your kids isn't enough. It's,
yeah, Trump. I mean, yeah, the ruling elite largely hated Donald Trump because he was a terrible CEO of America Inc. He said the quiet part loud. He made, like you said, he woke everybody up accidentally because he's too megalomaniacal, too corrupt, too narcissistic, and too dumb to realize that he could get away with the American empire and get away with far more crime if nobody's talking about what the president's saying. So yeah, it was a disaster kind of for the ruling elite, but I guess we've gone into that before, but
so that's
yeah. Well, I was just gonna say I don't want to run out of time for this one, so I was gonna jump into
Government Secret Segment 2, Escape from Blair Witch Mountain.
You've retitled it, but I like your title better. So this is the Battle of Blair Mountain. It's part of the Mine Wars. Many people don't know anything about the Mine Wars. Maybe we can talk about other aspects of it on another show. So I'm sticking to kind of one of the most famous moments in the Mine Wars. And this also has to do, lay a little background with, there was tremendous battles, both physical and cultural and everything else, socioeconomic, over whether there could be unions, whether workers could unionize, work together, actually have some rights, have some power. And if it weren't for the immense efforts of these workers back in the early 1900s, then there's so much shit that we enjoy today, or as they try and chip away at it, that we wouldn't have at all. Things like weekends and kids not in the workplace, and whatever healthcare we do enjoy, even though it's the worst in the civilized world, is thanks to these battles that these workers waged. And the right to unionize, although corporations have found ways around that and, been able to gut unions down to about 7% of the workforce, which is why you see the American worker is more exploited than, perhaps ever, or at least in many generations. But so this year is the 100th anniversary. We got another anniversary, the 100th anniversary of the Battle of Blair Mountain. It was the largest labor uprising in U.S. history and the largest armed uprising in America since the Civil War. The conflict occurred in Logan County, West Virginia, as part of the Coal Wars, a series of early 20th century labor disputes in Appalachia. And by the way, I am reading from Wikipedia, same reason we've just spent a few minutes discussing that. I think that if you're getting this from the kind of standard empire newspaper, Wikipedia, then you know this is no secret. It's just secretive because they don't talk about it anymore. They don't teach it in history class. They don't want kids learning about it.
Yeah, this is the first I've heard of it. Quite honest, is this show, you saying it right now, is the first I've heard about the largest labor uprising in America.
Yeah. And it should be, I never learned about it in school either, and it should be mandatory. This should be our history lessons in, 6th grade or whatever. But so in May 1920, over 3,000 Mingo County miners joined the union. And back then, many corporations and companies would just fire everyone for joining a union. And in the coal, the way the coal industry worked then is many of these people had been brought to that area specifically to be coal miners. The coal company controlled their lives, gave them housing. So that also means that if they fired them, they would evict them. They would kick whole families out of their houses because it was kind of a full ownership of their lives. Many of them were grabbed off the boat at Ellis Island and do you want a job? It's paying. All right, grab your kids, grab your wife. Here we go. Head off to West Virginia. The coal industry also liked hiring various kinds of immigrants so that you would have a lot of different types of people working in the mines, so that many of them didn't speak English, so that they couldn't communicate, because workers are less of a threat if they're not able to unionize and organize. So in 1920, 3,000 joined the union. They were fired, which means they were also evicted. The coal companies then hired agents of the Baldwin Felts Detective Agency. So one of these private detective agencies that would basically private cops that would do this kind of shit. So they were hired to evict the families of their former employees. On May 19th, 1920, a dozen Baldwin Felts detectives, including Lee Felts, who founded it, arrived in Matewan. That afternoon, Albert and Lee, along with 11 other men, set out to Stone Mountain Coal Company property. The first family they evicted was a woman and her children because the woman's husband wasn't there. So they're evicting women and children from their homes for joining because their husband joined a union. They forced them out at gunpoint and then threw their belongings into the road under a steady rain. The miners who saw it were furious, and the word spread around town. A little later, I don't know if it was a day or two, a gunfight broke out, killing several people, including Albert and Lee Felts, the founders of the Baldwin Felts Detective Agency. This gunfight became known as the Matewan Massacre, and its symbolic significance was enormous for the miners. The seemingly invincible detective agency had been beaten. Chief Sid Hatfield, who was in the firefight, became an immediate legend and hero to the miners. But then when he was headed to the courthouse for a later trial on related charges, he was unarmed. He was flanked by his wife and his friends. A group of Baldwin Felts agents standing at the top of the stairs of the courthouse opened fire on Sid Hatfield and his friends. Hatfield was killed instantly. So basically, this private detective agency just murdered these people because they were upset about what had happened earlier. The miners, angry that Hatfield had been murdered and knowing the assassins would escape punishment, began to take up arms and pour out of their mountain settlements to, develop a kind of militia. The fiery Bill Blizzard assumed quasi-leadership of the miners. Meanwhile, the anti-union sheriff was named Sheriff Chafin. He had begun to set up defenses on Blair Mountain. He was supported financially by the Logan County Coal Operators Association. So they're funding the sheriff to basically go to war with the miners. And it created the nation's largest private armed force of 2,000 people. And this is where you get the federal government involved. President Warren Harding threatened to send in federal troops and Army Martin B-1 bombers to suppress the miners. So he was threatening to bomb U.S. citizens in order to stop the miners. By August 29th, the battle was fully joined. Chafin's men, though outnumbered, had the advantage of higher positions and better weaponry. Private planes, this is where it really gets fucking insane. Private planes, this is 1920. This is pretty early. And private planes were hired to drop homemade bombs on the miners. A combination of poison gas and explosive bombs left over from World War I were dropped in several locations near the towns of Jeffrey, Sharples, and Blair. On orders from General Billy Mitchell, Army bombers from Maryland were also used for aerial surveillance. So the U.S. Army was helping the coal barons to drop bombs on miners.
It's wow. So is that maybe the first time the American government has bombed its own citizens? Or
so I was looking this up. I know that in one of these mine wars, it is the only documented time of the U.S. Army. Now, I think there might be other times where it's happened, but the U.S. Army dropping bombs in America on U.S. citizens. Because I know there's other bombings like the Move bombing, but I think that might have been police or something. So anyway, so I was trying to look up whether this is the one that's referring to, but it's possible they might be differentiating that the Army bombers were only used for surveillance and it was the private planes used for dropping bombs. But anyway.
Wow.
So I just have a little more here. Colonel William Eubanks of the West Virginia National Guard came to command the government and volunteer forces. So this is, if you think about it, and this is what Wikipedia is not telling you. So here's where you get past the kind of liberal view of it, is that this is the U.S. government, the U.S. military, the National Guard, working with coal barons, which is the corporate, rulers, corporate titans of assholery in this country. So this is corporations aligned with the U.S. military, like doing the bidding, the U.S. military doing the bidding of corporate America. I mean, it is, and it really shows that corporations own the government in that sense. I mean, if they are able to use the U.S. military to attack U.S. citizens, then it is a corporate government. It is coal barons owning the military of the U.S. government.
And it always has been that way. Really, honestly, this America has always been a corporation with an army.
Yeah, and I mean, another good example of the alignment would be the fact that in order to get West Virginia to join the Union in the Civil War, they basically told the ruling elite of West Virginia that you can have your state. You'll have your own state because going into the Civil War, it was part of Virginia, but the Union needed all the coal to keep the military running, and so they said to West Virginia, the area of West Virginia, you can have your own state if you just join the Union, so we can keep having the coal. So it was like a deal between the U.S. government and the coal barons against the South. Now, I'm not. I'm glad the Confederacy lost. I'm not defending them, but I'm saying this is the alignment of corporate interests and the U.S. government.
Right, and it wasn't about like, oh, slavery is so wrong. It was just like, well, we need coal money, so
right.
we'll cut off this part of Virginia, and you guys just play ball. Just so, oh God.
I mean, well, and they kind of, the way I was talking at the beginning of this, they kind of had slavery anyway. They're hardly paying these people. They own their lives. They would often pay them until workers won the right to not have this be the case. They would pay them in company dollars that you could only spend at the company store. So it's like, it's like borderline slavery. I mean, it essentially is slavery, but
no, it's just a Disneyland. I mean, that's like Disney bucks or whatever.
Yeah, it's Disney bucks. So, all right, Colonel Eubanks comes into the West Virginia National Guard to command the government and volunteer forces. Sporadic gun battles continued for a week, with the miners at one point nearly breaking through to the town of Logan and their target destinations, the non-unionized counties to the south, Logan and Mingo. Up to 30 deaths were reported by Chafin's side and 50 to 100 on the Union miners' side, with hundreds more injured or wounded. Federal troops arrived September 2nd. And besides the fact that they don't say this, but besides the fact that I think the miners were probably skeptical that they could win against the full federal army, the miners said that many of whom were veterans themselves said they were unwilling to fire on U.S. troops, and they largely headed home because they didn't want to go to war with U.S. troops. They really just wanted to fight the coal barons. After the battle, 985 miners were indicted for murder, conspiracy to commit murder, accessory to murder, and treason against the state of West Virginia. Though some were acquitted by sympathetic juries, others were imprisoned for years. The last was paroled in 1925. At Blizzard's trial, remember, he was the one leading the miners, an unexploded bomb was used as evidence of the government and company's brutality, showing that they had dropped bombs on American citizens, and he was acquitted. So this is honestly what we like. This is the type of shit we should learn in history class. Workers have been at war under the capitalist system to try and live, okay lives, to try and not be exploited to such a miserable level. I mean, many of them, we all know, coal miners die in 30s and 40s from black lung back then, and even into the 80s and 90s, that was still going on regularly. And it's like they were fighting for just a, moderately okay level of life. And for that, the government of the state and the U.S. government worked together to go to war with them.
Literally, the United States will send troops to kill you if you try to stand up for yourself as a worker. I mean, and that's still happening today. Like, I mean, everything that happened 100 years ago is still happening today. I mean, now it's a little more sophisticated or whatever. Like, oh, Jeff Bezos gets money from the CIA, and so he's going to target union organizers at Amazon and fire people like Chris Smalls. But if they really organize and really, storm the gates, that the federal government's going to send military to kill them.
Well, yeah, either to kill them or arrest them, and the company can call in cops to stop strikers from being in the way of their operations, and the cops will come in, which is the force of the state, to come stop workers from demanding their rights. And then they'll create a little fenced-in free speech box off in the corner of the parking lot where they're allowed to be, so they don't get in the way. You're nothing like being inside a tiny little cage that's called the free speech zone, to show you how many rights you have, how free you are to stand up and demand your rights. But yeah, you're right. I mean, in general, corporations have gotten more sophisticated about all this shit. They wouldn't generally shoot people anymore because they know that type of shit goes viral and it hurts their brand. They were less worried about shit going viral back then because, if there was one photo of the shit that went down that whole month, you'd be surprised. So yeah, but nowadays they're more sophisticated. They know how to crush unions in very complex way. They fill it with infiltrators. It's going on right now against Amazon in Alabama, right? And they've done so many things to try and make sure that Amazon won't be unionized.
Oh yeah, and they're targeted attacks, people getting followed, smear campaigns. I mean, they do all of it now. Because again, it's like you say, sending, their private cops to go shoot people, that's not good for their brand. And if people really focus their pressure, then they'll have to change. Like when FedEx got all the pressure during the George Floyd protest to force the Washington Redskins to change their name to the Washington Football Team, because they said, we're going to pull our $500 million licensing deal. Which to me, that's where I wish the American people would get more sophisticated in terms of how they mobilize and target the ruling elites, because if you hurt the ruling elites bottom dollar, then they'll buckle, man. And they know how to infiltrate, divide, distract, and keep people afraid in these traditional senses, as we talked about in the last segment, Operation Chaos. And we talked about there's private intelligence, and the FBI have infiltrated. I'm sure they've infiltrated these union movements against Amazon and everywhere else, these labor movements today. Oh
yeah, absolutely. Many of these unions are infiltrated. That doesn't mean, I'm not saying people should stop being in unions. I'm just saying it's something to be aware of. If there's people in your union saying, hey, no, I don't think we should strike. I think we should study the problem for the next 3 years and then come back and we should meet. But the quorum for each meeting should be 700,000 people. And if we have less than that, then we can't speak until we get more than that. Just things to slow down, muddy it up. We'll have a panel, of a committee, of a group, of a hearing that decides if maybe possibly. And, it's a lot of that. That's what a lot of the infiltrators do, is just that shit, slow everything down, muddy it up, piss people off, create fractured disagreements and things like that. But, you're talking about the bottom dollar, and that's like, Amazon fears greatly a unionized workforce. And the idea that if they were to get unionized in this one plant in, Alabama, that it could spread to other plants. And before you know it, Amazon has to actually treat their workers right. And so they're terrified of that. What they're not really worried of is the kind of liberal garbage of, we don't like that Amazon hasn't tweeted out an image that says Black Lives Matter, so we're demanding you sign a petition, and if we get 100,000 people, we're going to send that petition to Amazon, and that's going to hurt their feelings. That's what they're not afraid of.
Yeah, no, they're not afraid of a petition saying they should tweet more Black Lives Matter stuff. They're not afraid of that at all. They don't care. They might have even put that petition out there just to distract people. I mean, like, I wouldn't be surprised if they did that, because Yeah, like you say, I agree. People should, peacefully protest and all that stuff. But I think we need to get more sophisticated. I mean, I think we should just be, and we don't need to coordinate it or put it in a map or a meeting or an email because they'll find that. But just everyone listening, join the NSA, join the CIA, join Amazon, join Fox News, join MSNBC, and start fucking it up from within. That's what they do to us. You know what I'm saying? Like, sign up, join the CIA, and just start fucking it up from within. And you don't answer to anybody. There's no emails they can track. Just start fucking it up, And
just like at the CIA, just take all the toilet paper off the rolls in the men's room and just hide it.
Yeah, just always. Oh shit, the Wi-Fi keeps going down. You know what I mean? Just how did that happen? Oh man, somebody put damn it, the coffee maker's broken. Like just shit like that, just to make everyone's life a fucking raving pain in the ass at CIA headquarters on a daily basis. Just drive them fucking insane. And
I used to have a whole bit about fucking up, fuck up society just in tiny little ways, just doing small shit to just fight back and to show him it was boss. And I don't remember the whole list, but it was things like, when you're at work, slip a photo of your balls into the PowerPoint presentation. They're not going to know whose balls they were.
Yes, that's what you should do at Langley. That's what you should do. That's what you should do if you work high up in Amazon. You should do that stuff. You should get a job at MSNBC or Fox and just start fucking it up.
It's called, by the way, to actually get more serious about exactly what you're talking about, it's called worker sabotage, and it actually is incredibly useful. I'm not going to say how I know this, but there are still people involved in this, in like, for example, the automotive industry, when the bosses will do something super shitty to the workers, let's say cut their health care or something, then, what do you know? A bolt gets dropped into the conveyor belt line, and who knows how it got there, but all of a sudden the cars smoke is coming out of the machines that fastens the rivets to the girders and other words I don't understand, and before you know it, they've got to stop making cars for 6 hours because how did that happen? Who knows?
Weird. And the minute you gave our healthcare back, the thing got fixed.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, no, that is an old and trusted tactic that's definitely important. Before we wrap up here, I just wanted to give a shout out to the West Virginia Mine Wars Museum, which does exist. There is a whole museum to remind people of these workers fighting for not just their rights, but all American worker rights. And many of them, died or were imprisoned. Right. And so you can look them up online. You can go on a tour if you're ever in that area of West Virginia. Maybe donate if you want. Another thing to check out is my co-host on my other podcast, Uncensored, Eleanor Goldfield, has a killer documentary called Hard Road of Hope. And it's all about West Virginia fracking and mining companies and the horrors that they have done to the people there, and really how that is like a microcosm for everything that goes on by corporations exploiting Americans all over the country. But yeah, if you want to learn more about this topic, it's won all kinds of awards, and it's at hardroadofhope.com.
Nice. And of course, Lee and Eleanor are going to be on the March 25th episode of the Political Vigilante Game Show, which we've done 3 episodes now.
Yes, we are. And we're all horrified. You're going to expose us as idiots, Graham.
Oh, you're no dumber than me and Ron. You know what I mean? Yeah. So check that out. All right. Well, this was
excellent episode of Government Secrets. Escape from Blair Witch Mountain. And Operation Chaos.
So Lee Camp, in addition to Eleanor's documentary, which I want to check out about the Mine Wars, it sounds like something from a Star Wars prequel. But I'm glad that we know where it's at. Where else can people watch you and get entertained by the Lee Campness?
If you want to check out my other podcast, that's called Uncensored. I actually technically have a third podcast that's all the stuff from Redacted Tonight, and that's called Moment of Clarity. And my TV show's Redacted Tonight. And I just, if you forget all this shit, go to leecamp.com because it's too much to remember. So check that out. But by the way, I'm really just I'm not bringing this up to try and promote it, but I'm just bringing it up to because since we're this month has been a month of leaving the corporate platforms like YouTube for the alternatives like Rockfin. Patreon, I mentioned it last week. Patreon completely fucked me and cut all of my revenue by 75%. And so I've created a page for my other podcast at liberapay.com/Lee Camp, liberapay.com/Lee Camp. And what's kind of incredible about this is that it's a French nonprofit company, and there's a small percentage fee for processing, but other than that, they don't take actually any of it. Whereas any of the donations, whereas Patreon takes a large percentage, and YouTube takes a large percentage of super chats. And so this is kind of an alternative to Patreon that takes zero.
Oh, I like that. I think you talked about last week too. Yeah, I got to get on board with that. What's the name of the company again?
liberapay.com.
LiberaPay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, folks, please hit the like button, subscribe to both of our channels. And if you're listening to this Government Secrets on Libsyn or iTunes or Spotify or whatever, positive reviews, like, shares, spread the word on this. This is only our 33rd episode. We're only a third of the way to 100. Come on.
By the time we get that far, we'll be scraping the bottom of the barrel to be like, did you know President Johnson had small feet but a big dick?
And he never told anybody about his socks. Like
about the feet. Yeah, he kept the feet a great secret.
A great but loved swinging his big dick around. That was that.
Apparently that's true. He would literally throw it out on the desk,
Jesus
in meetings.
Well, that's one way to govern.
I mean, that will end an argument, I guess. Maybe not in the way you had hoped.
I want this bill passed. Zip, bump. All right. Okay, President Johnson. Literally. Get it?
Yeah.
So I've, of course, been demonetized by the good people at the CIA and YouTube. So check out everything I'm doing and support the show. I have a Patreon, patreon.com/Graham Elwood. Although Whitney Webb said Patreon just took her down. So I'm a little worried about Patreon.
Really? So
yeah.
maybe my decrease was not an accident.
I don't think so. It seems like no. In fact, I'm going to have Whitney on the show, my show, Political Vigilante, next week to talk about it. Because they gave her some jive ass. You violated the terms of, blah, 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 deep state, Coventry or whatever. So folks, go to rockfin.com/Graham Elwood and support the show. It's free to sign up. All my content is on Rockfin. I'm just putting one clip a day on YouTube, but go to rockfin.com/Graham Elwood and you get my bonus content, Lee's, Whitney Webb's, Jimmy Dore, Richard Medhurst, a bunch of other people, Ron Placone, Kim Iverson, that are all on Rockfin. So support what we're doing. And then, of course, every Thursday we do the Political Vigilante Game Show, and we're going to have Lee and Eleanor on in 2 weeks. So check that out.
Damn straight.
Yes. I think that's it. Is that our show?
That's the show.
That's our show, Government Secrets, ending 33rd episode in the books, like Lyndon Johnson's dick.
You don't have to go home, but you can't stay here.
Get out.
All right, man. Have a great week. I'll see you soon.
All right, buddy. Enjoy your move and unpacking in your 35 skateboards.
Later.
Bye. Thanks for watching, everybody. Please hit the like button, the subscribe button. Go to patreon.com/Graham Elwood and rockfin.com/Graham Elwood, where you can support the show. Also, I have a Bitcoin wallet, a Bitcoin Cash wallet, and an Ethereum wallet in the show notes. We're taking cryptocurrency. I have a Coinbase affiliation link. We're going to be getting on some other exchanges. So that's how you support the show. Make sure you hit the subscribe button. YouTube is unsubscribing us at an alarming rate. I have a PayPal button at GrahamElwood.com. I even have a Venmo at Graham-Elwood. There's a lot of ways to support our show. We are getting crushed
by YouTube. They're we've dipped under 73,000 subscribers because of YouTube. Thanks for supporting what we do.